Can complaining reap rewards? Wayne, you run a wholesale store. How would you describe customers today?
Pretty terrible. They complain about anything.
Really?
Yeah, a lot of them are just whingers. They're just they're right, I'm wrong. They just want to whinge whether they get their money back or want to replace their part.
Can you give an example of a whinge you've received that's kind of really got under your skin?
Millions of them. I'll buy a part on my website. They don't read. They'll just guess. And then they'll wing up and complain because it's not the part that they wanted, even though they ordered it or they fitted it. It didn't solve their problem. So they'll have another whinge.
Tell us about what happened during the Brisbane floods, a customer there.
Had a lady ring. She was having a whinge because she hadn't received a spare part for a dryer. And she wanted to know when I was going to get it. And I said, well, lady, you're flooded. You're 6 foot underwater in Brisbane. And I said, the airport's closed. The roads are all flooded and closed. And I said, the pigeons are blooming allergic to the rain. I said, unfortunately, yeah, you're not going to get your part for a week or two until the rain subsides. And she just went on and on and on that it was my fault that it was raining.
You have a no returns policy. Do customers respect that?
No. Most of the parts these days are electronic bits. You can't take electronic components back. It's not me, it's the manufacturers who won't.
How many complaints would you get in a week, do you think?
Can't count that high.
Really?
Yep.
That many?
Yep. If I don't get 3 or 4 a day, every day.
What is the impact of that on you?
Oh, it just drives me nuts.
Does it take up a lot of your time?
Yep. Because you got to answer it. They'll just ring up and abuse the crap out of you. Then they get on Google reviews and bag the shit out of you because you won't give them their money back, or they blame me for sending the wrong part out. They won't admit that they've ordered the wrong bit.
You've been running your business now for nearly 17 years.
Yep.
Are complaints more common now?
Yes, they are. And I think it's technology and Google reviews. I think the more stars you get on Google reviews, the more perfect you have to be. I think Google reviews and that is just a load of garbage. I run my business for 16 years at 1.2 stars and I don't really care about it.
How do you respond to the complaints?
Well, depending on how they write it, whether it be on the phone, you try and explain to them and solve their problem. But most of the time they just don't want to listen.
And what about online reviews, Google reviews? Do you respond to those?
Yeah. I get a bollocking from them, so they get a bollocking back.
Right.
Yep. Businesses are too frightened to tell Mrs. Smith to go jump because they're going to lose a customer or lose $20. My attitude is spend more time with your better customers. They'll bring their friends down, so you might lose $20 today, but you will make $40 tomorrow.
You received a 1-star review from a customer who complained that you didn't have a part in stock, didn't give a refund and were rude. Can you read your response to them?
Well, you did get your money back. You're a liar. Why would anyone with half a brain purchase something that says no longer available? Sorry, I forgot. You cannot read. And then you might have a brain and you sit behind your computer like a tough guy, whinging like a clown.
What do you think is motivating those who leave complaints?
Pride. People won't admit that they're wrong, and obviously money.
Katrina, you're also a small business owner. Can you relate to what Wayne is saying?
Yes, I certainly can. So we're in a fortunate situation in that the reviews we've got are very good reviews. Like my accommodation is a 9.8 out of 10 on a booking platform. But I have got one example of a lady who made a complaint at our accommodation. She came in and she was all very happy. And then I got a call at 8 a.m. the next morning to say there was no hot water. So immediately I called the plumber to rectify the problem. The plumber came in, the hot water was fine. And then she started complaining. She said there was mould, there was needed recarpeting, repainting. And it got to a point where she said, if you do not refund a substantial amount of my money, I'll give you a bad customer review. So I gave in and I gave her that substantial refund. And the next morning I got a 1 out of 10 on the booking platform.
So she still left a bad review?
She was a serial complainer and a scammer, I believe.
So you don't think it was a genuine complaint?
Absolutely not.
Lauren, you work in retail. What do you think motivates customers who complain?
Ooh. Most of the time, they're generally normal complaints. But sometimes, after working in retail for some substantial amount of time, you get to notice a pattern with customers and they tend to try to take advantage of your customer service. So often they probably want a refund or a new set of products or a new set of frames, because I do work in optical, or they do want a new set of lenses. And so often we say, oh, unfortunately, our policy doesn't accommodate for that. Can we try something else for you to satisfy your complaint? Because obviously we want to give them a good time as well.
So do you think people complain because their complaints are genuine, or do you feel, in your experience, some are not?
It depends on the situation. Sometimes they have quite a motive to achieve that, oh, I want to get a new frame, or I really want to get my money's worth out of this complaint. So they carry that with emotion and they pick a fight, or they often stay in the store for quite a long time. So it takes a toll on my emotional and my mental ability to even think and even reason and talk to this customer. I think, oh, I've got to hand this to another colleague, or who else can I consult to help this customer? Because obviously what I'm doing to the best of my ability isn't working.
Outside of work, what bothers you?
Ooh, there's a list. I have a very good sense of smell. So one particular major thing I get irritated by is people's smell on public transport, especially when you're crammed in like sardines. You can smell people when they haven't showered, or especially if they don't look after their hygiene very well. I'm also an engineering student, so when it comes to exam times, the engineering stereotype is very accentuated. You can smell people from across the room who've been cramming for exam times, and often you can see dandruff in their hair just because, oh, you really skipped that shower to get that extra 20 minutes of study time as well. So it hasn't been fantastic.
Do you consider yourself a whinger?
Within reason, I do whinge just to get a common understanding with the people around me. So I whinge to see, oh, are my thoughts and opinions within reason? Does everyone else think about this? Or am I out of line? Do I need to step back into line as well?
Walter, what annoys you in your neighbourhood in Sydney's inner west?
Probably the planes.
The planes?
Really, more than anything else, yes, because we're out under the flight path. The other thing that annoys me is generally the appearance of the high street. For example, graffiti, untidy, empty shops. Not so much litter. Australia's quite good on keeping streets clean in that respect.
Would you call yourself a whinger?
No, I'm not a whinger. No, I mean, yes, my antecedents are as a lawyer, perhaps, but whinging shouldn't be disparaged. I think it's a right in any, let's say, liberal democracy like Australia. It's all part and parcel of the rule of law. You know, there are laws there which have to be upheld. Sometimes those laws don't function. People whinge when they don't function.
What's a cause you've taken on in your community?
We set up an action group a little while back, basically, because we had a problematic nightclub.
What were the problems that you saw?
We had licensed premises which were used as a nightclub, occasionally performing live music. This generates noise at unsociable hours. When the club shuts down in the early hours, or late at night rather, you've got the antisocial aspects of people slamming car doors, people shouting, people urinating in the street, people leaving bottles, cans, etc. in the street, which is not very nice. People wake up to mess in the morning, for example. People can't sleep. It stresses people out.
Who did you complain to?
A variety of bodies. Usually the two big kind of players in this particular scenario were the Inner West Council and New South Wales Liquor and Gaming.
Does all this take up a lot of your time, or did it?
Not particularly, no, because you have to be organised. I mean, complaining, I think the art, if I can call it for a better expression, the art of complaining is really an art. It can be structured very sensibly, so you know who to complain to, and not waste too much time beating around the bush. A lot of people, when they do get down to the nitty-gritty of complaining, for example, tend to adopt a scattergun approach. They're speaking to the wrong people. You always head to the people at the top.
What is at stake if we don't whinge?
If we don't whinge, well, pent-up frustration, basically, and we start, taking the law into our own hands as vigilantes, perhaps. And that basically is corrosive of any liberal democratic society. You have to complain to get things changed, to get things done, to move the agenda forward, effectively.
Steve, what do you think is worth complaining about?
housing is a clear. I think it's, that's very much a divisive topic, and I think the older generations are happy to see their wealth go up, but it's got the younger generations who are struggling to afford a home, and I think it's institutification. It's basically the stage of capitalism now where there's so much consolidation that we're in a stage where now that we've got corporations trying to extract as much out of us as they possibly can, because they have dominance over us in the sense that there's very little competition in markets, and now we're at the stage where it's everything, the prices are going up and the services are going down, and hence everything's become institutified really. So,
everything's becoming shittier.
Right.
Have you always thought this way?
I think so, but it's got worse over the past few years, and I think as slowly as we're kind of moving into this post-trust era now, and I think the last sort of maybe 7 or 8 years, it's got really to a sort of a point now where it's become really obvious, that things aren't sort of travelling in the right direction. Yeah.
John, have the whingers in the room got a point?
I don't like whingers personally, but some are valid, like with what Wayne was saying, for example. Some of them have non-stop whingers with the clients that are coming through. I don't know how I would handle that, because I used to do white good repairs and I know exactly what he's talking about. So, there are relevant whingers. However, I don't put my energy into whinging, because the more I put my energy into that, the more I don't grow. My belief is if I focus on positive, I'll grow. But if I sit there putting energy into complaining about something that is irrelevant or I cannot make a change on, for example, with the flight path, you can complain as much as you want. You've got 2 choices, put up with it or move. If there is a complaint that's legitimate, that's going to help serve people, then yeah, do it. But if it's just you being a whinger, you're looking in a rear-view mirror when you've got a massive windscreen in front of you that you can move forward, but you're still looking backwards. So you're not progressing.
You've built a multi-million-dollar air conditioning business. Where did you start?
In Mount Druitt. Started with $1,000 from myself, and I borrowed $1,000 from Dad. So I bought a Toyota Corolla, bought parts with the washing machine parts and fridges, and I started doing that. And it didn't happen overnight.
When you were starting out your business, say, borrowed the money from your dad, sort of that era, if you complained about something, say, to him, what would he say to you?
My dad was an ethnic, and that belt and that hand would work very well.
Really?
Don't complain, get it done.
That's it. Yeah.
Do you think Aussies complain too much?
Aussies need to be more resilient. I think the government has got a lot to answer for on that. They've softened everyone up and entitled, and now they're no longer wanting to work or wanting to grow or wanting to do things. They're too busy worrying about what someone else is doing and how they can complain and bag that person. Social media is a big one of that. If you look at someone's got a nice car, must be a drug dealer. Tall poppy syndrome is the worst it's ever been.
How do you feel about the older, younger generation? Does one complain more than the other?
These days, I believe the younger generation complain a lot more due to the fact of entitlement. We have it with our apprentices. After a year and a half of being an apprentice, they want to be the CFO. Yeah. And they want to come in and sit in the office and, I'm smarter than the technicians, I should be here. And it's like, I want to be service manager. And it's like, mate, you're still in your nappies. Wait till you get out of that and let's talk.
We caught up with Josh from far north Queensland, who also prides himself on never complaining.
When I was a young fellow, I decided to move to Atherton because the opportunity to take a job collecting trolleys had come up.
See you later.
Bye, Dad.
Have a great day.
I did trolley collecting for at least 10 years or more, and then they stuck me on the checkout, and I went from being this quiet as a mouse trolley collector, and I just opened up. Lovely to see you, good, thank you. Fabulous, what beautiful weather. And you're having a great day today? Oh, Melinda's beautiful. Love Melinda.
Good wet, mate.
Having you here has made up for all the wet weather all year. How about that? And you take care, and we'll see you soon.
He's a beautiful soul, and he strives to go the extra mile to help the people.
I'm very happy with doing checkouts. I always saw myself as at the front with the customers. You make me smile, Narelle, and you have the most fantastic day, won't you?
He's just one of the nicest guys. He's genuine.
So will you be watching the Cowboys tonight? And this is my pride and joy. This is the 2025 Checkout Operator of the Year award. It is a dream of mine to be Australia's Checkout Operator of the Year. It makes my day to see you again, that's for sure. I see that I'm lucky to have the things I've got. I also see it as a little bit of a calling. The reason why I don't complain is I'm very grateful to have a job. And you have the loveliest day. It's so nice to see you. I see the value in people. There we go. Just for you. You take care. And it always reminds me that our greatest thing in life is the people around us.
Sue, you're a psychologist and have a background in neuroscience. Is Josh's attitude to life common these days?
His attitude to life is not common. I would say it's a very healthy one, but it's not so common. I think we've seen a real shift probably the last 30 years, and then particularly since the rise of social media, or really a confluence of factors. Probably from 2007, we saw the really extreme rise of social media and smartphones, and an increase in 24-hour news cycles and a focus on negativity and a lot of global events. I don't want to know if manipulation is the right word, but it's really activating the threat activation pathways in our life.
So are we whinging more than ever?
We are activated to look for the negative, and we are expressing that a lot more. So whether it's whinging, whether it's complaining, we are focusing on the negative almost constantly.
Does focusing on the negative mean that we do have more to whinge about?
I think that's a relative thing. If we look at previous generations, the things they really struggled with were often real life survival. So do I have enough money to feed my family to get through to next week? Is there, real housing issues? Do I have a house, or am I homeless? If we look at, and of course not the lowest socioeconomic status in society, but for the majority, the way we live now is like only royalty could live in the past in terms of discretionary incomes and comfort.
Who's got more to complain about, younger or older generations?
I think it's partly about relative now or then. We've got to be careful again of this competitive suffering. I think one thing I have seen is I think now people try and hold on to it like they're the exception. So the worry I see is as it's this sense of no one's ever experienced financial hardship before. Everyone has always had a house before. Like no one in my family's history had ever owned a house except for my parents. They were paying 18% interest at that time during the 90s. They were never able to pay it off. I ended up paying that off for them. They're different kinds of struggles, but I also think this idea that we hold on to now that my pain is worse than anyone's ever in history, that becomes a problem. Like I think 1850s for women, probably not a great time. There is a problem when you think you're the only one who's ever experienced it, because that actually isolates us more.
From an evolutionary perspective, why do we whinge?
Well, we are wired to look for the negative. We evolved in a time of scarcity. We are social animals, so being able to communicate what was wrong actually did help us survive. When we shift into just complaining for complaining's sake without a sense of wanting to have an outcome, that starts to become a problem.
So in a sense, is it fair to say we are wired to whinge?
Absolutely. Well, we're wired to look for the negative. We're wired to look for fear, threat and danger. The thing is now we see it constantly. When we were evolving, it was intermittent.
Jonathan, do you feel you're wired to whinge?
No. In my current circumstances, I've surprised myself in feeling very grateful, privileged to have support around me. I should give a bit of context. Last December, I had the horrible surprise of being diagnosed with terminal brain cancer and having to go into emergency surgery to remove a 5 centimetre tumour which had been there for 5 to 10 years. So a traumatic experience, came out the other side of it just feeling so grateful that there was a system which would look after me, whether it was my wife insisting that I did go back and get it checked out because I was so stubborn to realise that there was a serious problem, or whether it was the nurse who saw the terror in my eyes as I was getting wheeled away to have brain surgery and just grabbed my hand and said, "Hey, it's okay, you'll be fine. We do this every day." I feel very privileged that I was able to get myself into a position where we can economically afford to do it. That's partly off the back of wonderful family and friends who have been so generous to enable us to go and look at ways we can try and get this treated.
There's your family there.
Yes, yeah, family, friends, and also professional communities. I was a little bit surprised how generous professional communities were to chip in and support.
After an experience like yours, anyone would be forgiven for complaining in a way. Do you feel ripped off ever?
No, I haven't really complained, although reflecting on it, I did complain to my oncologist once about the side effects of the chemo, and he was very deadpan and just said, "Yeah, that happens."
Mary Lou, how do you feel about the term complainer?
I've always considered it a slightly pejorative term, and it doesn't fit with the advocacy work that I do.
Melbourne's Queen Victoria Market has been a part of your life since you were a child. What does that place mean to you?
My father was a trader there. I was brought up there, as Dad. As a child, it was my playground, and like all market children, we used to go into the market and help our parents. It was a safe place for me. I had free rein. Everyone knew I was Jaime Kindler's daughter. So it was a positive, vibrant, wonderful place to be part of, and I've never lost that admiration and love for it.
More than 10 years ago, plans were made to redevelop the market. What was proposed?
The proposal now is to build a very, very tall development on the southern edge of the market. 3 very tall towers, one 184 metres in height, at the doorstep of the market, but also subsuming part of the heritage sheds on the southern edge of the market, which are currently used by the fruit and vegetable traders for storage. As well as that, they want to take the car park and convert it into open space. But parking and access are absolutely essential to the viability of the market.
Given that the market itself would still exist, why then does it matter so much?
The market is the market because of the people and what it does. It's a living, working, fresh food and general market. And that's what people want, that's what people love, and that's what tourists come to see. It's as important to Australia as the Sydney Opera House, the Sydney Harbour Bridge, is what Melbourne is really about, and that market encapsulates that.
How have you taken up the fight?
We try and make the council and the state government and the federal government accountable and transparent as to what they propose for the market. And the reality is, making it into a hospitality event space isn't what Melbourne wants. This is not renewal, this is destruction.
Have you attracted any criticism?
Well, I don't think I'm universally popular in the city of Melbourne, and if you don't attract criticism, I don't think you're doing your work. It goes with the territory.
Alison, some of your community turned against you and your business. What happened?
I'd been running music venues since I was 25 years old, and I moved into a place in Marrickville, but over time my neighbours started to complain and really dig the knife in, because they complained, I guess, to the government bodies, not just to the police, that what I was doing, was too noisy for the neighbourhood.
What did the campaign against you look like?
At first, it was a couple of neighbours coming in on an event night and just telling us to turn the noise down. Then it was about council sending me letters, liquor and gaming, putting fines on me, putting restrictions on my licence. I was put on criminal notice, and I didn't really know what the criminal notice was, because as far as I was concerned, I was just running a live music venue. And that scared me as a young entrepreneurial lady.
How did you respond to the criticism?
I took it very personally.
Did you speak to locals? Did you try and gauge what was going on?
I really tried. Yeah, I did. One of the neighbours who was in the closest proximity, I bought him a bottle of whiskey and hoped it would all be okay. The other side of it as well is that there were neighbours. There was a whole apartment block, a new apartment block, which I had made the assumption that they were the ones that were complaining. They were all telling me that there was no problem. So I suppose in my head, I had 400 people saying that they thought the club was fine. But yeah, it started very small and then it became a lot of people. It started to become petitions, knocking on doors, that sort of thing.
The complaints triggered an investigation. You had to change your licence, install noise limiter and also pay fines. What was that like for you?
Personally, it was a lot to harbour. I mean, I had reopened my business through in COVID, and so I was starting on the back foot, but then to lump in legal fees, fines, putting in noise limiters, investing time and money into making sure that the neighbours wouldn't complain. Like, I had a phone that they could call. I was really open to talking with council and police. I had monthly meetings with police.
Where did all that leave you and your club?
It left me with no money and no choice but to close. And I guess as well, my mental health had deteriorated so much that I needed to stop.
Walter, you spearheaded that campaign against Alison's club.
I did.
How did it feel to win?
It felt immediately within the community a relief that suddenly this cause of all our immediate problems had vanished overnight. And yet it was a Pyrrhic victory because it was fitted out to a very high spec and is up and running again, albeit under different management. We still occasionally hear noise, we still occasionally hear rowdy behaviour on a Friday or Saturday night, so the problem is still there.
What part of you, I guess, wanted to take up that cause for your community?
I think what part of me, as I said, I've been a lawyer in my past life, basically. You have an intuitive sense of what is right, a sense of justice and fair play, or fair dinkum, as you call it in this country. I found certainly within the community a lot of people didn't have English as their first language, okay, and the whole art of complaining, lodging complaints with Inner West Council or liquor and gaming, presupposes you are computer literate, for example. In English, okay, many people of an elderly generation now are not computer literate. They don't even know how a computer operates. So there's a lot of disadvantage here, and somebody had to and that's why I stepped in, I suppose. I'm no knight in shining armour, far from it. But I don't like people being ridden roughshod like that.
Maggie, you call yourself a professional complainer. Why?
There is a process that you have to follow to be a good complainer. I think that who is a whinger and who isn't is in the eye of the beholder a lot of the time. And I don't think we whinge more. I think perhaps people feel more empowered to complain. And I think in a lot of cases that's a very good thing. It's democracy.
You worked at New South Wales Ombudsman, you handled complaints.
I
Would you
did.
say you've cracked the code on how to do it?
Well, definitely, yeah. Watching the way people didn't get very far with their complaining. I'm a lawyer too. There's a lot of lawyers in the room, unfortunately. But we deal with conflict. That's what being a lawyer is all about, is a resolution of conflict. And people want face-to-face. They want to see someone. They want to talk to someone. And I think what's happening now is that corporations in particular are distancing themselves from their customers, and you get a call centre that you're complaining to. And so what we are actually doing by complaining is we're oppressing people who are already working for $2 a week or whatever, and we're not really getting to the powerful people that we need to. So as a professional complainer, you do it properly, you get to the decision maker.
What do you complain about?
Oh, many things.
Are you a Google reviewer?
Yes, I'm a very, very frequent Google reviewer, and I always leave good comments if it's warranted. But I think that that's another part of democracy too, and I like that. I think that it's much more accessible, that you can actually immediately put up what you think and the sort of service that you receive from somebody.
How do you decide what's worth complaining about and, oh, I might just park that one?
Well, I think it's a bit like the aircraft noise, although I think that, I come from a generation too where social action was great. I marched against Fraser cutting the Dole, I marched against the damming of the Franklin River and so on. And so I do think that complaining about social issues like that is a very valuable thing to do, and I think it's a shame that it is being seen as such a threat and that protest is becoming more criminalised than it's ever been.
Aside from that, when you're sort of making that choice, do you sort of think, look, is there a real issue here that I know I can take up to the high levels?
Look, sometimes I just want to have a whinge. Let's be honest
feels
about
good.
it. Feels good, that's right.
Do you always get the outcome that you're after?
No, of course not. Not always. Mostly, though.
Okay. So you don't mind having a whinge?
I don't mind having a whinge, no.
Kazi, you worked for an insurance company
Yeah.
in a customer service role.
Yeah.
What did that role involve?
So you would make outbound calls updating about a claim, and you receive inbound calls from customers inquiring about what's going on.
How would you describe the customers?
I would say most of them are nice, probably 80 to 90% are nice, but like that 5 to 10%, there are some really nasty people there that, I don't know, they swear at you, they're always angry, like just unreasonable people, yeah.
Of all the calls you'd take in a day, how many do you think would be kind of verging on that rude?
Probably about 3 to 5.
Did that affect how you felt about your job?
You do feel frustrated a bit when they're abusive to you, they swear to you and whatever. Like, as an agent, you're not allowed to respond back being angry, even if you do feel angry. Like, you can't rage quit. You have to stay there and just take it, talk to them, respond to them.
So does whinging affect our minds and bodies?
It does. If we are just focusing on the negative, complaining constantly, it can have profound impacts. At one level, it keeps us in a heightened state of threat. So we're flooding our body with adrenaline and cortisol and stress hormones. We feel more aggressive, we feel more defensive, we see more perceived injustices. It makes it harder to access the higher order prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for more things like compassion, empathy, nuance, complexity, the capacity to call up and actually speak to someone like a human rather than dehumanising them.
Connor, when you were 11, you received some cash for Christmas. How much was it?
Back then, I wouldn't have been able to tell you how much I'd been given with it right in my hand because I was born with a genetic vision impairment.
So you didn't know how much you were given, you had no idea what the note was?
No, I did not. And I had no way of finding out either.
Back then, was there any non-visual way to distinguish between banknotes?
Not on the banknote itself, no.
Did you want that to change? Did you want something to happen?
Yes, I think it's really important for everybody, regardless of ability, to be able to handle their own affairs.
What did you decide to do?
Well, at first, being 11, I went to my authority figure, which was my parents, and said, hey, this is something that I've been sort of thinking about lately. I can't read this. I feel like this should be something that I can do. And so they then went to the authority figure on banknotes, the Reserve Bank of Australia, and said, is there anything we can do about this? And they unfortunately said, no, there isn't. And so we sort of thought, well, that's not good enough. And so we launched a campaign that lasted about 3 years, started on change.org, put a petition out for people to sign, got in contact with news to raise awareness and put a bit of push behind us.
What were you wanting to see happen?
I wanted the note itself to have a difference in the way each note felt, a tactile difference, for us to be able to feel the note and be able to go, oh, yes, this is a 5. Ah, yes, this is a 20, without that external possibility of error.
Throughout your campaign, did you ever get any negative feedback?
My mother does have one story where she had this lady who said, I don't know why you're wasting your time on this sort of thing, love. If the Reserve Bank of Australia ever goes forward with this this silly tactile feature idea, I'll eat my hat. My mother's always wanted to ask her how that hat tasted.
After a 4-year fight, the Reserve Bank announced that all new banknotes would include tactile features. What did that win mean to you, Connor?
Well, obviously it was quite a big personal success for me as an advocate, as someone who's always been taught to speak up for myself, particularly when faced by societal barriers. But, you know, for me, it also meant future security. It was something that I had fought for because I saw that down the road, you know, I'd be handling cash a lot more as I got older. And so I felt, you know, a massive sense of accomplishment that I was able to push this change through, but also a lot of relief, not just for me, but for a lot of other people, all those other people who we'd heard stories from about being ripped off or anything similar to that.
Did you feel like the whinging, the complaining was worth it, I guess?
Oh, absolutely.
Katrina, in 2019, Qantas sent you a new loyalty card. What did you think it was for?
Well, initially I thought it was just our general Qantas Club lounge renewal, which it was, but when the card arrived in the mail, much to my delight, with my name on it and a membership number, it said I had lifetime membership. So I was over the moon, as I never win anything, and could not believe it.
You'd been a customer for a while?
Yes, yes.
In 2021, you attempted to use a Qantas lounge. How did that go?
For a number of years, I was actually able to access the lounge with that card quite easily. It happened, it worked every single time. And on one particular occasion, I went in and they said that my membership had lapsed. And I said, how could it lapse when it's a lifetime membership? And they said, well, it has. And I said, well, how does that work? Anyway, it was a fairly embarrassing situation, and they very kindly let me access the lounge. But as a result of that, I had to follow up why this had been taken back, so to speak.
So you got in touch with Qantas. Did you get a response?
Not initially. I emailed on a number of occasions, and then eventually they emailed back and said, we don't offer life memberships. To which I replied, well, you did, because I've got the card that shows lifetime membership. And they just continued to say, we do not offer that life membership. And we know for a fact that they did up until a certain point, because you could purchase a life membership.
Were you satisfied with their response?
No, not at all. And we just thought out of principle, I'm not normally a whinger or a complainer, but I just figured I had a valid case because I'd been gifted something. So we actually I decided to take the case to VCAT.
That's the Victorian Civil and Administrative Tribunal.
Yes, that's right.
And how did the tribunal rule?
It actually wasn't in my favour because there is no legal requirement to give something back to someone that's actually been given, was what the member sort of stated.
What did others around you think of your complaint against Qantas?
Actually, it was interesting. There was a mixed bag. It went fairly viral on social media, and I'd say a good 80% were very positive experiences in my favour, because a lot of people had had similar concerns with the airline. There was a few people out there who thought that I was entitled, and look, like I said, I'm not a complainer or a whinger by any chance. I just thought out of principle, I just thought it was worth following it up just to see how it would go. So all in all, it was actually really positive from my perspective.
It's a lot of years, a lot of time, money, effort?
A lot of years, time, money and effort, and I'm glad I went through the process, even though it wasn't the outcome that I was hoping for.
Maggie, you say you've kind of cracked the code in a way on how to complain to get a result.
Yes.
How would you approach Katrina's situation?
I think Katrina did the right thing, absolutely, all the way by the sound of it. I mean, put it in writing first. If you ring up, they can ignore you.
How important is it to sort of understand the system and understand how to make it?
It's really important to know who to complain to, I think. A lot of us waste our time complaining to some poor person in a call centre offshore, but you really do need to identify who's got the power to do what you need to do. And I do think that a lot of complaints which cost the community money, VCAT costs money, it cost Katrina money, it costs all of us, all the Victorian population money. And I think that's outrageous that a corporation the size of Qantas couldn't deal with a matter like that in an honourable sort of way.
Whingers, I think, are losers because there is no point complaining unnecessarily. Just be happy with what you have. Just make the best out of it. My name is Christopher Chalea. I'm 61 years old. I moved to Australia in 2004. I want to give my family a better standard of living and more security. We have been able to build a good life. In India, there are groups of people who are extremely rich and groups of people who are extremely poor. Healthcare and education in India is very different to what it is here in Australia. Healthcare is available, but you need to pay a lot of money. When we first came to Rockhampton, it was very hard to meet any Indians, but over a period of time, yes, we were able to see lots of people.
The only thing we missed was family when we came here.
My daughters have been able to build good lives in Australia. After uni, they were successful in getting jobs, and they are settled today as a family. There is no point complaining about a lucky country because a lucky country is a country that gives you everything that you need.
Sue, you're a psychologist. Do you agree with Chris that Australians who whinge are losers?
He's right in the sense of having perspective is really important, you know, and he's come from a place of relative lower wealth, and coming here and seeing the riches that we have, but then still seeing us complain is very hard to tolerate. And what we do know is cultivating this capacity to focus on what we call realistic optimism is powerfully important to do well in life. Acknowledge the hardship, get support, have compassion for that, but just constantly focusing on the negative does not make for a better life. And it's something we have to train though.
Do you feel like we've become less resilient?
We are seeing there's a change in our resilience. So in our capacity, say, for things like delayed gratification, our expectations have shifted. And we have shifted a bit this link between effort and outcome and action and consequence, accountability. We can focus a bit more on what our rights are, but not always on what our responsibilities are.
Annie, you moved to Australia 15 years ago from the UK. Yes. Are Australians too entitled?
Gosh, that's the question, isn't it? I feel like after moving over here, for me, there's a sense of gratitude to be able to live here, considering how the UK is right now. But sometimes I do think I wish maybe Australians could see what I see about Australia in terms of how beautiful it is here and how lucky we are here to be able to live here.
So you feel like Aussies sometimes whinge a bit about it?
Yeah, absolutely. It could be anything, like it's too hot at the moment. It could be about trying to find a parking space. It could be the cost of living at the moment, cost of housing. You know, these are all questions that everybody's asking right now, really, in terms of the way everything's going.
There's a slang term Aussies sometimes use for the British. Is there any truth to the whinging pom stereotype?
The whinging pom. No, you know, look, as a British person, we are really good at having a good whinge. I mean, it is like a national sport in England, and our hot topic of conversation has always been about the weather. I mean, especially right now, as they've had so many massive heat waves going on. I can't even imagine what that must be like.
Does it apply to you? Do you whinge about a few things every now and then?
Do you know what? I've actually changed quite a lot. If you asked me like a year ago, yes, absolutely. But I've completely changed my lifestyle. I'm living in Sunshine Coast hinterland now, in a small community, and I'm surrounded by really good people, and I think it plays a really big role in it, and especially community as well. So surrounding yourself around people who are positive people really helps to not really complain. Like, I don't really complain at all anymore, so...
Steve, you're Annie's partner. Was she a whinger?
I'll get in a little bit of trouble here, but...
It's okay, it's just live TV, you're fine.
Look, you know, she's a little bit of a whinger, but look, I think generally, like, the English, like, you know, whinging pom thing is a bit of a myth. I lived in England for a little while, and I think people in England really connect via their kind of, you know, shared sort of... unhappiness about sort of minor things like the weather or something like that. But I think Australians do a pretty good job at it as well.
Who whinges more, you or Annie? Or Annie, do you want to jump in?
He does, definitely, 100%. I said to him earlier, I said, if you had to say what do I whinge about, what would it be? And he couldn't think of anything. And then I said, actually, there is one thing I do whinge about, and it's him. So it would be, and he was like, what do you mean? And I said, well, putting the plates in the dishwasher, taking the bins out, just things like that. Normal husband thing that you might have to ask quite a few times to do. So, but Steve definitely whinges quite a lot, don't you?
Oh, look, I just think that,
just a straight yes or no is fine. No, I'm just
a little bit. I do a little bit, yeah.
Walter, you're a Pom and you have whinged. Has anyone made that connection?
Yes, I think it's ubiquitous, isn't it? I mean, although having said that, just going back to the question, who whinges more, Australians or the British, basically, there's a perception, perhaps, that there is the whinging Pom. And, I freely admit to that myself. I used to have a social media account on, I think, TripAdvisor once, called Whingy Pom. I don't use it anymore, I hasten to add.
Your complaints resulted in the closure of Alison's business. Did you ever consider her side of the issue?
Not until we actually met. But after the business closed down, Alison reached out to the community in what I thought was a very noble act of contrition, apologising to the people she'd upset. Not everybody, a few people received handwritten letters, I believe, weren't they, Alison? I thought to myself, well, should we actually kind of reach out and meet this person? And we did.
Alison, you were forced to close your business. Why did you want to apologise to the community?
Oh, it's a really good question. I'm a different person now to what I was when I was running that club. I'm out of the music industry and I actually live my life now, and I come across so many different people in my job, when I walk the streets. I go out now. I have a life because I'm not running a business, and my identity isn't so interwoven with running that business.
What did you say in that letter?
Well, so I actually saw that it would have been pretty upsetting. And interestingly, hearing Walter say that I was a local nuisance, I mean, I might add that to my LinkedIn.
It's quite cool.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. But I saw outside of the heavy notices that I was getting from Liquor and Gaming and Council, that these were people who had been in the community, and there was just something on my conscience that said, I don't know if I can move forward. And I did a lot of work on myself, and I knew that if I wanted to move forward, I sort of had to set those people free, but mostly set myself free from that person who just wouldn't budge and wouldn't stand down when they were complaining. And yeah, I mean, I've since found out that there was more than the people that I sent the letters to, but I hope that the 3 that I sent out, 3 or 4 that I sent out, had a ripple effect to the people as well.
So you both ended up going for a coffee.
Yeah.
Is it fair to say that complaining brought you together?
Ironically, yes. Yes.
What was that coffee like?
Mediocre, wasn't it? It wasn't the best.
It wasn't the best
coffee itself.
For a country that prides itself on its coffee, this was a poor showing.
Katrina, you lost your case against Qantas. Have you flown with them since?
This morning.
Did you try and avoid it for a while, or?
I did, but look, we're happy to support both airlines in any which way.
Connor, 10 years ago, you successfully campaigned for banknotes to include tactile elements. Have you taken on any other causes?
That was such a long and a bit of a gruelling fight, to be honest. I thought I deserved an early retirement. At least until I think up the next one.
Mary Lou, you're still fighting to protect the Queen Victoria market. Will you ever give up?
Well, if we get outcomes that protect the market, of course I will. But it's been a long 12-year fight so far.
Wayne, your business once had only 1.2 stars on Google reviews. Yep. Has that changed?
Well, it did 12 months ago.
Really?
It went viral. I was on a TV show because somebody dobbed me in for a remark that I made. I was on another TV program, so they come and interviewed me. And that night, I had a marketing agency who was texting me all night and could not believe how many people logged onto my website to see who I was. And for the next week, I had 4 lines, non-stop, 24/7. If we ever need a part, we'll come and see you.
So what's your star rating now?
It's dropped down about 4.2 or something.
4.2?
Yep.
So it's gone up from 1.2 to 4.2?
Oh, yeah, but it's gone from 4.7 to 4.2.
Oh, okay.
People,
Sliding.
same thing. So people obviously just read it and just want to join the queue and just bag me. So you just write back to them and go, like, big tough. Didn't even leave a remark, just a 1 star. Wow.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. Hope you have no complaints about the show. Thank you to you all for being here. It's been a pleasure sharing the room with you tonight. Thank you for your company. I'll see you next time.